Have you ever paused before a mirror and realized you're staring at someone you no longer recognize because you've worn the same mask for so long? You wake each morning, paint on your smile, rehearse the words you think others want to hear, and tuck away your true self behind a facade of fine, thank you. Oscar Wilde wrote, "Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth." Yet how often do we hide our deepest longings, even from God? What if the person you see reflected isn't who God made you to be, but the role you've learned to play? Today, we begin a journey from pretense to authenticity, from a life lived for applause to one grounded in the one who sees and loves you without a mask. We don't start wearing masks overnight. It begins subtly, like dust settling on a surface we no longer wipe clean. A child once danced freely in the living room, unbothered by judgment, but somewhere along the way, that child learned that approval comes with conditions. Smile when you're sad. Stay quiet when you're angry. Don't ask too many questions. And slowly, layer by layer, the mask forms not out of rebellion, but out of survival. Can you remember the first time you felt the need to perform? Was it in school, at church, maybe even at home? And who did you stop being that day? God didn't create you to audition. He created you to abide. As we grow, the world claps for certain versions of us: the productive one, the agreeable one, the always strong one. And we start molding ourselves to match the applause. It feels good at first, doesn't it? To be liked, praised, accepted. But have you ever noticed how heavy it becomes to be someone you're not? Like carrying around a costume that doesn't fit, yet being too afraid to take it off. And somewhere deep inside, the soul starts to whisper, "I miss who I was when I didn't have to impress anyone." Can you hear that voice? Because God does. He hears it louder than the applause. But the longer you wear the mask, the more your true face begins to fade, not because it's gone, but because you've stopped looking for it. It's not that God can't see you anymore. He can. It's that you've forgotten where you placed your reflection. You scroll through screens, chase accolades, even serve in church, but somehow you feel hollow, don't you? Not sinful, not evil, just lost. And what's frightening is how normal that emptiness starts to feel. Have you mistaken comfort for calling? Have you exchanged purpose for performance? The mask may get applause, but only your soul can feel God's hand gently lifting your chin. The mirror is a dangerous place when you don't know who you're looking for. You glance, adjust your hair, your tone, your image, trying to measure up. But what is the standard? Who decided who you need to be? Was it a parent's praise withheld? A friend's approval you never earned? A church that asked for perfection before grace? Listen carefully. God never asked you to be impressive, just honest. He doesn't redeem masks. He redeems faces. And the moment you dare to take yours off, even if trembling, He will not turn away. Can you believe that? Or have you worn the disguise for so long, you've convinced yourself it's your skin? Sometimes the mask becomes so familiar, it begins to speak for you. You laugh without joy, agree without peace, nod when your spirit wants to shout. And you start to wonder, is there even a real me left? But the truth is, masks don't erase identity. They only conceal it. Deep within you, beneath the polish and pretense, there is a soul aching to be seen. Not for what it does, but for what it is. Beloved. That word beloved, do you ever use it for yourself? God does. Not useful, not pleasing, not flawless, just mine. He calls you by name, not by performance. There's a moment in every journey when pretending becomes more painful than being rejected. The mask you once wore for protection now suffocates you. You try to breathe, but the air feels thin because you're no longer made for performing. You were made for communion. And here's the sacred truth. God has never once mistaken your role for your heart. He's been waiting at the backstage door, not to criticize, but to whisper, "Come as you are." You don't have to earn your place at His table. You just have to show up, masked, undone, and unafraid to be known. And maybe that's where healing begins. Not in perfect answers or polished prayers, but in raw honesty. The kind of honesty that says, "God, I'm tired of pretending." Maybe you speak those words in your car, or in the shower, or through tears late at night. There is no shame in reaching the end of the performance. It's the doorway to presence. Because God doesn't love your act, He loves you. The you that cries, the you that questions, the you that's still figuring it out. And when you finally remove the mask, you don't lose your identity, you reclaim it. What happens when you finally take off the mask and nothing shatters? The world doesn't end, people don't flee, and you begin to taste a kind of freedom you forgot was possible. That's when you realize the mask was never keeping you safe. Fit was keeping you separate. Separate from others, from your purpose, and most heartbreakingly, from your God. But He's not surprised by your real face. He knitted together in your mother's womb. He doesn't need you to be stronger, smarter, or more put together. He just wants you honest. And isn't that what you've been craving too? To be held without needing to hide. When you begin to live without the mask, something strange happens. Start doing the same. Vulnerability is contagious in the best way. Suddenly, someone else admits they're not okay. Another stops pretending their marriage is perfect. And someone finally confesses they're tired of faking faith. And in that sacred unraveling, community is born. Not one built on polished images, but on real souls meeting in the light of truth. Isn't that what the church was meant to be? Not a museum of saints, but a hospital for the weary. And Jesus, He walks its halls with nail-scarred hands open wide. The enemy wants you to believe that without the mask, you're too much or not enough. Too broken, too doubtful, too emotional, or not spiritual enough, not strong enough, not worthy. But let me ask you, who told you that? Was it God? Or was it shame wearing the voice of someone from your past? The truth is, God never said you had to clean yourself up before coming to Him. He just said, "Come." That's grace. And grace doesn't require costumes. It meets you exactly where you are, peels back the lies, and gently reminds you, you are still His. One day, you may wake up and realize, you're smiling and it's real. You're praying and it's not performance. You're alone and not lonely. That's what healing looks like. Doesn't erase the past, it transforms the present. No longer haunted by who you pretended to be, but anchored in who God always said you were. So what if your face, the real one, is exactly what the world needs to see? Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. You are the light of the world, Jesus said. Not the mask, not the role, you. And that, my friend, is more than enough. Have you noticed how masks multiply? What began as one small protection becomes layer after layer until one day, even you don't remember what your real voice sounds like. You laugh differently. You walk differently. Your prayers become scripted lines in a show you didn't mean to star in. But deep inside, something aches. It whispers in moments of silence, in mirrors before sleep. This isn't who I am. And if you've ever heard that whisper, take heart. It means your soul is still alive, still reaching, still yearning for the God who sees behind every mask and calls you by name. There's a moment when the pain of pretending becomes greater than the fear of being seen. That moment is holy. It's terrifying, yes, but sacred. Because when you stand there, stripped of pretense, God doesn't recoil. He leans in. He wraps robes of righteousness around your shame and calls it beautiful. And maybe, for the first time, you start to believe Him. That you are never loved for your performance, but for your presence, for your existence, for your heart still beating under all the pretending. That's when real worship begins, not in perfection, but in honesty. Think of a child. They don't wear masks. They scream when they're sad, laugh when they're happy, ask questions when they don't understand. Jesus said the kingdom belongs to such as these, not because they are flawless, but because they are free. Somewhere along the way, we traded that freedom for acceptance. We became masters of pretense, apprentices of applause. But heaven's applause sounds different. It comes in the quiet. In your room, with the door shut, it claps when you kneel in brokenness, not performance. And Jesus whispers, "You are enough," not because of what you show, but because of who you are. Have you ever been loved in your lowest moment? Not pitied, not tolerated, but truly loved when you felt most unlovable. That's what Jesus offers. Not a spotlight for your best self, but an embrace for your worst. You don't have to curate your image with Him. He knows the shadows. He knows the slips and spirals. And still, He kneels down washing feet that run, lifting faces that hide, and calling out, "Come home." The mask was never your protection. His grace is when you believe that you'll never want to wear the mask again. Some masks aren't made of paper, they're made of competence, humor, theology, busyness. We hide behind well-constructed identities that even look holy. But the soul knows, it grows tired. And in that tiredness, God speaks not with thunder, but a whisper. "Let me see you." He's not asking for your resume. He's asking for your heart. You can't impress the one who already knows the deepest corners of you. But you can surrender. And in that surrender, you'll find a freedom more radiant than any applause. You'll find home. You know what's exhausting? Trying to keep a mask in place while your soul quietly collapses underneath. Outwardly, you're composed. You smile at the right moments, say the right things. But inside, there's a silent scream, a question. Does anyone see the real me? And if that's you, right now hear this. God sees you, not the role, not the edited version. You, the weary, confused, imperfect you. And He isn't disgusted. He isn't disappointed. He's moved. Because when your strength runs out, that's when His begins. And in that moment of surrender, healing walks in. We often fear that if people knew the truth about us, they'd walk away. So we edit, we sanitize, we perform. But what if someone walked toward you, not away, when the truth spilled out? That's what Jesus did with the woman at the well. She tried to keep the conversation theological, distant, safe. But He leaned in. He named her shame, not to condemn her, but to free her. And in that moment, she dropped her jaw, the symbol of her hiding, and ran to tell the truth. Imagine that freedom. It's not a fantasy, it's an invitation. Sometimes we become so used to the mask that removing it feels like losing a part of ourselves. But masks are not identities. They are imitations, hollow copies of who we think we should be. You are not your performance. You are not your pretend strength. You are not your survival strategy. You are God's handiwork, His poetry in motion. You were not created to be a mask. You were created to reflect His image. And that image shines brightest when you're fully known and fully loved. And friend, that's exactly what you are. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, "I don't recognize who I've become"? It's a sobering moment, but it's also holy. because you can't heal what you won't face. And the mirror doesn't light invites. It says, look again, but this time, look with grace. When Jesus looks at you, he doesn't see the mask or the mistakes. He sees the masterpiece under construction. You are unfinished, yes, but not unworthy. So stand before the mirror, not to judge, but to remember. You are still in the hands of the potter, and he's not finished yet. There's a strange beauty in being undone. When the layers fall, when the defenses crack, when all you have is honest to God meets you there, not to fix you in a rush, but to sit with you, to remind you that he's been there all along, behind the mask, under the weight. You are not alone in your unraveling. In fact, that might be where you find him most clearly, not in the polished versions of yourself, but in the raw truth of who you really are. And maybe, just maybe, that's what freedom really looks like. Why do we find it easier to carry shame than to carry grace? We wear the mask of competence because we fear rejection. But grace is not earned through performance, it's received through surrender. The prodigal son rehearsed his apology all the way home, thinking he had to earn his place back. But the father ran, not after perfection, but after presence. He clothed him before the boy could even explain. That's what grace looks like. It sees you far off, and it runs. You don't have to fix your life before coming home. You just have to come. What if the very mask you've worn to be accepted is the one thing keeping you from true connection? Real love can't reach the surface, it wants the soul. We long to be seen, but also fear the exposure. And so we trade intimacy for applause. But applause fades. Connection doesn't. Look at Jesus. He didn't come to be impressed by masks. He came to wash feet, touch lepers, eat with outcasts. He didn't run from the mess. He entered it. You don't need to impress God. You need only be real with him. That's when love starts to heal. Do you remember when you stopped laughing with your whole heart? When your joy became measured, polite, reserved? That's the moment the mask took hold. God delights in the full version of you, the loud laugh, the awkward dance, the honest tears. He doesn't want the polished version. He wants your presence. David danced before the Lord with all his might, not because he was perfect, but because he was free. And you, too, were made for that kind of freedom. A life where worship isn't a performance, but a return to joy. Many of us walk through life with invisible signs that say, "Do not enter," hanging over our hearts. We don't want others to close. We think if they knew, they'd leave. But Jesus walks past every sign. He steps into locked rooms, even the ones behind shame. When he appeared to the disciples after resurrection, his first words were not a rebuke, they were peace. And then he showed them his scars, not to glorify pain, but to prove that healing leaves marks, and that's okay. Your story, with all its wounds, still matters to him. The longer you wear a mask, the harder it is to believe you were ever enough without it. But God is in the business of restoration. He removes what we built in fear and replaces it with what he created in love. He doesn't shame you for hiding. He invites you to come out, to be known, to be seen, to be held. In the garden, Adam hid, and God's first question wasn't, "What did you do?" but "Where are you?" That's the voice still echoing, today not of anger, but of longing. Where are you? Will you let him find you? Have you ever stared at yourself in the mirror and wondered if the reflection even knows your name anymore? That's what happens when we live too long for the expectations of others. You become excellent at impressions, but a stranger to your soul. But God doesn't bless imitations. He blesses the truth. He formed you with intention, not for performance, but for communion. The mirror may lie, but your maker never does. And he says you are fearfully and wonderfully made, no mask required. Some masks aren't just worn on the face, they're worn in how we speak, how we walk, how we avoid eye contact. We carry them into our friendships, our churches, our prayers. But God isn't fooled by our filters. He listens for the tremble in our voice, the silence in our sighs, the ache beneath our achievements. He sees through it all. And what does he offer in return? Not condemnation, but compassion. Not exposure, but embrace. The moment we remove the mask is the moment we finally begin to breathe again. Sometimes we think the world only loves winners, so we wear strength like a shield and success like a crown. But the kingdom of God is upside down. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Jesus didn't chase platforms, he knelt in the dirt. He didn't wear a mask, he wore a crown of thorns. So why do we think he expects perfection? He asks for hearts, not performances. And if your hands are empty, good. They're ready to receive what grace longs to give. There will come a day when the applause fades and the crowds go silent. And in that stillness, the only voice that matters will speak your name. Will he recognize you? Not the mask, not the persona, but the soul he crafted. Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice." The more we wear the mask, the more distant that voice feels. But when we begin to take it off, his voice grows louder, calling, guiding, loving. And that's when we come home. Not just to God, but to ourselves. You weren't made to live behind a wall of expectations. You were made to walk in the light. Every scar, every fear, every messy truth. God sees it all and still calls you beloved. So take a deep breath. Let the mask fall. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You just have to be you to him. Because the real you is the one he died to save. Not the filtered version, not the perfect act. Just you, and that's enough. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to keep up the act? Like running a marathon with a painted smile. The laughter feels hollow, the victory is fleeting. Because when your identity depends on applause, silence becomes terrifying. But God doesn't need your performance, he desires your presence. The real you, weary and wondering, is exactly who he wants. He doesn't love you for what you show. He loves you for who you are, even when you're not sure who that is anymore. Do you remember the first time you felt like you had to hide? Maybe someone told you you weren't enough. Or maybe silence told you that being honest was too risky. Either way, you built the mask brick by brick. But what if you could go back? What if God was already there in that moment, waiting not with shame, but with healing? His mercy is not for the perfect hits, for the hiding, the hurting, the haunted. And he's still whispering, "Come out. I'm here." Sometimes the hardest mask to remove is the one we wear before God. We say the right prayers, quote the right verses, but inside we're crumbling. But God isn't moved by performance, he's moved by honesty. David cried, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." Not, "See my image." The safest place to fall apart is in his presence. You don't need fancy words or flawless faith, just a willing heart. That's where healing begins. We live in a world that rewards the filtered self, but filters can't heal wounds. You can't Photoshop your soul. That's why Jesus didn't come for the curated. He came for the raw. The bleeding, the doubting, the ones who've run out of clever edits. His grace is not a filter, it's a mirror that says, "You are still mine." Even when you feel unrecognizable to yourself, he sees you clearly, and he stays. One day, you'll look back and realize the mask didn't protect you, it isolated you. It didn't make you more love, that made you more alone. But when you began to let go, you started to live. The real journey doesn't begin when the world claps it. Begins when heaven whispers, "You are mine." And that whisper gets louder each time you show up with the courage to be honest. Freedom is not found in hiding. It's found in being seen and still loved. Have you ever wondered why we fear being seen? Because deep down, we think our truth might be too much, too broken, too messy. But Jesus didn't flinch at messes. He walked straight into them. He sat with the ashamed, touched the untouchable, wept with the forgotten. If he could call Lazarus out of the tomb, don't you think he can call the real you out of hiding? He doesn't recoil, he reaches. What if the version of yourself that you're hiding is the very one God wants to use? The scared one, the uncertain one, the one with a shaky voice and a heart full of questions. Moses stuttered, Peter denied, Thomas doubted, but God still called them. Why? Because his power is made perfect in weakness. So take off the mask of "I have it all together." That lie is heavy, and the truth is already enough. Every mask has a price. The longer you wear it, the more distant your relationships become. People can't love who you pretend to be, they can only love who they truly know. That's why Jesus invites us to come as we are, not as we wish we were. He doesn't bless illusion, he blesses intimacy. When you remove the mask, yes, some may walk away, but those who stay, they'll love the real you. And so will he. You may feel like you've worn the mask for so long, it's become your skin. But no mask is permanent in the hands of a savior. He specializes in restoration, not just of your soul, but of your identity. The mask may have been your protection, but now it's your prison. And Jesus came to set the captives free. He knows your name, not the fake one, the real one, and he's calling it. So here's the truth. The mask you wear might impress people, but it will never move the heart of God. He doesn't want a role, he wants a relationship. He wants to walk with the unmasked you, the trembling you, the honest you, because that's where love lives. Not behind performance, but in presence. Take it off. Breathe deep. Step into the light. He's been waiting for you. What would happen if you lived one day without pretending? If you spoke honestly, cried when you needed to, said no when you meant no, and asked for help when your soul was tired. That kind of vulnerability feels terrifying until you realize it's holy. It's in our weakness that God's grace pours in. He doesn't need your perfection. He wants your permission to meet you where you truly are, not where you pretend to be. Have you noticed that pretending isolates you, but honesty connects you? When you share your real story, others exhale. They realize they're not alone. That's how healing spreads one unmasked heart at a time. Jesus didn't come to make you more impressive. He came to make you whole. Your brokenness isn't a curse, it's a bridge. Through it, others will find the courage to take off their own masks too. The world shouts, "Be strong, be perfect." But the gospel whispers, "Be real, be still." The kingdom of God isn't built on flawless image. It's built on humble hearts. When you finally stop pretending, you'll find rest. Not just sleep, but souled deep peace. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary." He didn't say, "All who look put together." Just come, the real you. You are already enough for grace to begin its work. There's something sacred about finally seeing yourself not through the lens of fear or others' expectations, but through the eyes of God. In His eyes, you're not a mistake. You're not too much. You're not a disappointment. You are beloved, even with the scars, especially with the scars. because they tell the story of survival, of courage, of grace. The mask hides your shame, but his gaze restores your name. One day, you'll wake up and realize the mask has lost its power. You won't need it anymore, because you'll have tasted something better. Truth, it may feel fragile at first, but truth holds. It frees, it heals. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The world may never applaud the unmasked you, but heaven rejoices. And that's where your worth was always written. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's as quiet as a deep breath, the first one you take without a mask in years. It's as subtle as peace that sneaks into your chest while you're doing nothing impressive at all. That's how grace works. It meets you in ordinary moments and whispers, "You're already loved." You don't have to perform anymore. Just be, and let God do the healing. Now you know, the real you is not too broken, too strange, or too far gone. The real you is the one Christ died for, not the actor, not the mask, not the version others approved of. He went to the cross for the you beneath it all. So take heart, walk forward. The weight you carried wasn't yours to keep. You were always meant to walk in light, with your whole face turned toward the one who knows you. So tell me, who are you, really? Beneath the roles, the applause, the fear, who did God knit together in your mother's womb? That person is not lost. That person is not forgotten. That person is being called by name. No more masks, no more pretending. You are made in the image of God, breathed into existence by love. Step forward. Let the world see the face he sees. That is where your freedom begins.